Hello, well today I'm making a little coin purse cum credit card holder, and I've had quite a few people say to me, oh, like to have a go at some leather work, not really certain what perhaps to start with. And I sort of had to think about it and thought actually something like a little coin purse credit card holder, it's a really useful item. It makes a lovely gift, and it's good because you don't need much leather, you don't need many tools. So it's fairly accessible to anyone, and also it doesn't take too long, so you get quite a nice quick result. But it does test your hand sewing and your skiving skills, so you learn something as you do it. It's quite a nice little project. So what I've been doing, I've been knocking up some pattern pieces, and I will actually make these available as a digital download if anyone wants to buy them in my Etsy shop. They'll be at a very reasonable price. But regardless, if you watch the film, you'll see the techniques and what's involved, and you can always apply it for something else if you don't want to make this particular item. So I'll get going in just a minute. I will just say a couple of quick things about all of this, and that is that leather wise you're not going to need much at all. I mean, it's under a square foot of leather, which is really good, and tool wise you don't need much either. So a cutter, stitching tools and a skiving knife, and really you're away. So kept it really easy and simple from that point of view. The sewing is good fun. Do all of that by hand. We'll do a saddle stitch. It's a bit more testing to get it to look nice, but hey, let's have a go and see how it goes. Well, first step, if you get the digital download, will be to actually just cut out the pattern pieces, and that won't take you long. Once you've got those, you can then get on with actually marking out your leather. Now, I would suggest for this that you use a fairly firm temper of leather. So by that I mean a nice bit of vegetan leather, which feels reasonably sort of firm to the touch, has a bit of body to it, it doesn't sort of drop flimsily, but it's not so stiff that you can't easily manipulate it or do things with it. So this is vegetan, it's about 2mm thick. You could get away with something actually thinner, but it's a nice bit of, in this case, black, and I thought I'd use a contrasting red colour thread. So what I'm going to do is lay out the pattern pieces on the leather and then go round them with my little pointy awl. I'm just checking the reverse side of the leather, little mark there, to make sure I don't get caught out with any nasty little marks. So all I'm going to do, I'm holding it down, I'm just going around the edge, tracing around the pattern with a little pointy awl, and it's literally just a metal point, and it's enough to leave an impression in the leather for me to then cut it out with a knife. So I'm just tracing around. I've got in all 4 little components on this one, and I'm just tracing around each component. And it's really good actually, because something like this, you're not using a huge amount of leather, so if you sort of make a bit of a hash of it, it's not the end of the world. Hopefully you won't. But you know how it is, it's like with anything, isn't it? If one bit doesn't turn out quite right, you can easily cut out another, and you're not using much at all. So I've made this so that it will fit 2 or 3 credit cards. I've made it a little bit wider than a standard credit card, just by a little bit, and then you can get 2 or 3 credit cards in one side, and you'll be able to get some coins in the other side. And there'll be a nice little flap, so if you want to, you can put someone's name, your own name, or whoever you're giving it to, you can put their name on the flap. So I'm nearly there with the tracing out. I'm just going literally around it, and I'll do that with all the components. So I'll come back to you in just a minute. So I've now traced around my pattern pieces, and I'm going to cut the items out now. And for that I'm going to be using a little cutter. You could use a knife for this if you wanted to, it's whatever you like using. I quite like these fabric cutter knives. I find they're quite good for this sort of thing. It gives a good neat cut where you have a straight line. So I'm going to do all the straight cuts first and then come in with some of the not such straight bits. You could, if you wanted to, for cutting out, use a clicker knife, which I will be using in a minute. So if you wanted to, you could use one of these. You could use whatever knife you have available, really. Any little modelling scalpel, craft knife. As long as you watch your fingers and cut away from yourself, you should be fine. It's quite nice, something like this. It's fairly relaxing to do it. You can see what a tiny bit of leather it's using, which is good. I'll carry on cutting. On one part of the pattern there's a curve to help get your finger in to pull out any notes or coins, and you could just cut that with a knife. So I could just go around this with the knife and you'll get a perfectly good result. As I actually have a cutter, an arc cutter, I'm going to use it. Just because it will give a slightly more precise edge. But it's really, as I say, not essential, so don't be put off if you haven't. And it's the same thing with the corners. I could round the little corners with a knife, but as I have an arc cutter, I'm going to use it. I'll do the other one with a knife just to show you. So you can literally just cut it off, maybe easier actually with this one, and then just round it. One little snips. There we are. So you've got the two ways you can do it if you want to. On the bigger pattern piece, it's a bit fiddly getting into some of these corners, so I am just going to do these freehand with a knife. To get these out. And I'm using a little PVC type poly cutting board, so I don't hurt my tools. It's a little bit of like kitchen chopping board, but it's quite effective for that sort of thing. Now cut out my components, and the next step is to thin the edges of the leather in certain places. And the idea behind that, it's called skiving, and the idea behind that is so that it doesn't look so clumpy. You see, if I just take the two thicknesses of leather, you've got more or less 4mm at the edges there, and that would be a bit clumpy, a bit heavy in your pocket. So what I'm going to do is, using a skiving knife, I'm going to thin down this part. So this actually is the credit card wallet end of the purse. Okay, so I'm going to thin down those edges before we stitch them. And it's fairly straightforward. I quite like using these cheap tin metal skiving tools, and you just go along and thin it to about half the thickness on like a gradual slope. Hopefully you can just about see that on camera. So I'm shaving the inside and I'm taking the thickness down so it's not so bulky at its edge, and just going around it. If you don't like using these, I know that's not everyone's taste, you can use one of the traditional French skiving knives. You may need a little sharpen. If it does, just find an off-cutter leather sharpening compound and always just flat off the back, and then just give a few strops on the bevel side. and that will give you a nice polished edge. You can do both sides of your leather if you want. Get the rougher side and the smoother side. And then you can just go around with this. Same idea. Some people like these because they are easier to control to get a flatter edge, because obviously it's a flat tool. It's down to personal preference. Just work it along. And it's like a planing action really. So I'll carry on going around using my little cheap tin skiver. I don't know, I use these a lot I suppose, and I just get into a way. It's like it with any tools, isn't it? You start to like a particular kind of tool if you use it a lot, or you get practice in it. Take a bit more down off here. So a bit more down this seam. So that's the front component. That will be stitched on there. So I'm going to skive around the same area there. I'll also be doing some skiving around this end, all around here, down the sides and down the seams there. I won't be skiving for a section there because that's where the top folds over. And I don't want that area thinned. Ditto, I don't want to skive along here. So on the plans, what I've done is I've made it very clear where you skive by giving little hatched lines. So then you know which bits to skive and which bits to leave clear. So I'll carry on skiving around here next. Don't worry if you end up with lots of little bits of leather dust. It's what tends to happen with skiving. The two top parts, I'm going to be bending these a lot more. So whereas everywhere else I've skived in about 1/2 inch, with those I've gone in about 1 inch, the two tops. And that will just make it easier when I come to fold the sort of main pocket of the coin purse area. I should say with anything like this, I mean this is the area you don't want to skive, which I've marked again on the plan. I did make the mistake, I started to skive the other bit of it myself, and don't be put off if that happens, just carry on. I mean in that case it's very minor, it's a bit annoying, but that's all it is. Just carry on because the chances are you may make a mistake somewhere else, and I think it's often with this sort of thing better to carry on and just remember the next time you do it to be sort of doubly vigilant. But that's learning, isn't it? I mean, yeah, I know I've made over 500 or so belts now. I still learn little things now and again, and that's good. That's the thing about any craft, you keep learning. So I have nearly done that. When I now look at the components together, they're a lot thinner because of the skiving on the edges. It just looks a lot neater and it will polish up a lot better. I'm going to take a tiny bit more off those actually, get them a bit thinner still. Right, the next step is to sew on the tongue and also the bridge tongue, so that's the opening and closing mechanism goes under. So just using my pattern, I'm just marking on the leather with some little dots where they go, and then I know that when I come to sew that, I'll be sewing it on just there, and the little bridge piece I'll be sewing on just there. Just makes it easier to see them. This next step isn't essential, but it's quite nice. I'm just taking off the square corners off the tabs. So just taking a tiny little shaving of leather off. I'm using a little 1mm or number 2 edge shave for this, and it just makes them look a little bit neater. And ditto, if you do it underneath the tab, it will make it just slide in a little bit more easily. Again, not essential, but just quite nice little tiny details. So they're taking off the smallest amount. When I come to edge burnish these, they'll look a little bit better for it. Don't worry if at this stage some of your leather pieces are looking a little bit sort of rough on the edges, because you can polish those up later. What with all the skiving and everything, you'll probably find you'll get a little like fibre coming out, but it really doesn't matter at this stage. I'm just dyeing around the tab at the moment because I'm going to put the tab, going to sew it down, and it's easier just to do the sort of edge finishing, polish the edges and dye them before I sew it down. And then once I've put the dye on, I'm just going to use my little burnishing tool, just to round it over and give it a little polish. I have company. You say hello, Tom? Yeah. You're a lovely cat, aren't you? Purr, purr, purr. So I'm just going to glue tack the tab in place before I stitch it. So I've just roughed up the leather. So this rough leather to rough leather, and just press it down. There we are. Right, we'll glue that on there. The leather glue is quite quick to dry, so that's always useful. It works as quite a good tack. So to do my stitching holes, I like to use stitching chisels. So I find they're quick, they're accurate, and quite easy to use. So they come in little sets, and so I've got 6 teeth, 4 teeth, 2 and 1, and they give you nice little slanty holes all at the right angle, and it's very straightforward. So I've just popped the holes ready for the stitching, and I'm now just threading up my needles, and I do the usual little trick here of 2 needles on the thread, and I pierce the thread with the needle at each end to form a loop, pull it through, and it locks it on. You'll see if you follow things like the black bag making series I popped up, I do quite a lot on saddle stitching in there. Yeah, it's far easier to stitch this while it's flat. If I had assembled and then tried to stitch these tabs, I really would be struggling big time. I should really have this in the saddler's clam, probably be a bit easier, but not to worry. Just know I have a little loop. I always keep a little loop, and you pull your other needle through, and you can be certain that you've not trapped the thread at all. And then pull it in. So just doing my stitches, I'll carry on going round. So I've got my tab sewn on now, and I've got the little cross bridge sewn on. I put a bit of stuffing underneath the cross bridge, just a tad narrower than the tab, just to raise it so that that will now go underneath. You can sort of see that. So I know that's going to fit okay. And then, having done the stitching, I just hammered it all down with my plastic mallet. She just went like that, and it just beds the stitching in nicely. So what I'm going to do next will be to fold these parts over and sew up the side seams. I'm just folding over the side seams, and the edge of the anvil, if you have one, is pretty good for that. What you're trying to do is make this section basically bend. And the other thing you can do, if you don't have an anvil, just use a sharp back of a knife, or if you have a bone folder, and just work a sort of channel to facilitate that folding. So what you're trying to do is fold it over. And sometimes what I do is I run a little bit of water down the gap. So that makes it a bit more pliable and a bit easier to bend generally. So having partially formed a little crease, I can then, with wash the water, just put enough water on to fill the little trench made with the bone folder, and then just work it down a bit more, and that will make the leather a bit more pliable. So we're looking at the inside at the moment. And if you want to, you can even groove, run a little groove along there. So use a little grooving tool and just take a slice of leather out. I don't know if you'll see this on camera or not. I'm just going down that channel and I'm just pulling out a little bit of leather so there's space for that to fold over a bit more easily. So I've got a bit of a groove there now. Hopefully you can catch it on camera with the light and bring it over. And I'm going to give it a little bit more of a groove. You can, if you don't have a grooving tool, you can just use a knife for doing this. And now as I bring that over the edge, that's coming over quite well. Kind of thing you have to work at it a bit. Yeah, if you haven't got an anvil, you can get hold of a little bit of granite from a kitchen worktop person, and that's quite a nice way of doing it. Same thing on the other side. Exactly the same idea with the next bend. So what you're doing there is you're getting a, we'll fold this over and then in a minute stitch that to start making the coin purse side pocket. So I'll do one more bend there. Same sort of principle. I'm going to just by eye put a groove down there. Put a little bit of dampness in it. Use my bone folder, and then as I got the anvil edge, I'll just hit it over the edge of that anvil to encourage it. It's just really a matter of sort of working the leather edge. Just do a little bit spider grease and it will come. A little bit of water does stop it splitting, and it does help it as it dries out to keep its shape, so it's quite a good way of doing it. Right, so what I've got now, if you can just about see, is like two side walls, and then they will be stitched over onto there. That gives the coin side. The next thing after that will be to stick the credit card pocket over that piece there. You should begin to get the idea of how it's going. So I'll do a little bit more manipulation on these edges. I will then glue them down, ready for punching and stitching. Having done the shaping, the next thing is to glue the seams into position. Again, it takes a little bit of manipulation. One can then hold it all with little clamps. It's one of those things, it wiggles all over the place while you're trying to do it. Once you got it sort of into position, it's rather good. I've got some little, because you can't pin the leather, I've got little clamps. So that will just hold this while it's gluing. So that's now glued. You can still see it beginning to take shape really. So I'll glue the other side, same idea. Just before doing the glue up, just to add, I did go around with a little dauber and dye and just dyed off the edges. I may give them another dye later on, but it's easier to do it while it's flat again. So I've just been going around the edges with the stitching chisel. So I took the glue pegs off, just been going around the edges, getting ready for stitching. So I've got my holes in. So now it's just a simple matter of stitching around each part. So I'm doing the usual 2 needle saddle stitch here. So 2 needles. It's a nice strong form of stitching, because if it actually were to break, I mean this thread won't break, it's very strong. If it were to, you've got the stitches still sort of locking each other in. Here I have decided quite consciously not to recess my stitches. One could sink them in a groove, but I decided not to. Frankly, because I don't think they're that exposed, I don't think they're going to get that much wear. As I get to the end of a seam, I'm just going back on myself by 4 stitches, so double sewing over the last 4 stitches, and that way you're sort of really locking in the last bits. It's quite relaxing doing the sewing. I always quite enjoy it. I don't actually do very much hand sewing because most of my stuff's done by machine, but it's nice when you do little detail bits. Enjoy doing this. It's nice having a little project. It's a good thing to do actually. It gets a lot of skills up. Doing something like this, it's good practice for anyone really, and you end up with something very nice at the end of it. To finish off, hammer down all of my seams. So I'm just going to use my mallet, and it just makes everything settle and go nice and sunk in flat. And finally I'm going to restain and polish my edges. So I'm just going around now, putting a little bit of stain on the edges, and then just go over the edges with the edge slicker, and it gets a nice and shiny and slightly rounded over. A final push down on my seams. Ah, there you have it. One nice little coin and card wallet. So I'll just show you again inside. Undo your tab. You've got your coins, got your cards. Close it over, fold it down, and the tab tucks in the back. Yeah, nice little project. Hope you enjoyed seeing that one. A nice little project if you want to have a go at something, make a lovely present for someone. Gets your stitching, your skiving, your cutting out, all those skills, have a little go at them. I'm going to do these as plans if you want to, as an Etsy download, so a bit like my other plans I've put up on Etsy. Very reasonably priced indeed. I want people to have a go at doing this, so they're there. You'll support my channel if you do, but yeah, otherwise I hope you enjoyed seeing a bit of that and learnt something with all the techniques. Anyway, thanks so much for watching indeed. Bye bye.